Bruce Buffer, thank you very much for being on the podcast.
My pleasure. Thank you.
How would Bruce Buffer introduce Bruce Buffer in the octagon?
Probably the same way I do with every other fighter, with every ounce of passion, energy that I can put forth. I definitely get in my face. I definitely get me going. Because the thing is, when I introduce fighters, I introduce the way I would want to be introduced if I was fighting. I know what it's like to stand across from somebody and get ready to go, right? So I give it my all because the show's not about me. It's about the fighter. It's about the fans watching. And all I can say is that I'd probably have a lot of fun with it. I'd I'd wait for myself to ask myself to fist bump myself, and then I get in my own face and roar, and I'd want to definitely get as much emotion out of me as I possibly could.
You weren't introducing fighters on this last event, but you're going to be on UFC 250, right?
Yeah,
Got it.
yes,
And
I'll be 250, but I was also in Jacksonville for the other three events, so it's no problem for me to work without fans. I miss the fans. I love the fans when they're there, but I can't even take pictures with them anymore until further notice. We're in a whole new world.
interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting. But when I'm announcing, it's me in the eye of the tiger or the fighter in front of me, and it's always been that way. If there's 50,000, 20,000, 10,000 in the arena, I don't hear anything going on, although I do feed off their energy before I start doing my thing. But once I'm doing it, it's me and the fighter. So on Saturday night at UFC 250, I'll bring the same energy I always bring. And I tried to show that at Jacksonville because now, probably more importantly than ever, without the fans, it's more important for announcers like myself to give the best they can give to create that show atmosphere.
Let's talk about the regular event with the fans. Let's think of the most recent one you've had. I don't remember which one it was pre-COVID, but I would like you to compare that event with UFC 10. Do you remember?
Oh, 10 in Alabama, my first full UFC.
That's correct.
Well, back then the UFC was a spectacle more than a sport, and it became refined into becoming a sport and into eventual mainstream sport, which it is now. Um, Back then, the excitement level was still just as exciting, as incredible as my second show walking out ever. Headbutts are allowed. They're fighting three times in a night. It's a whole different world. Uh, right now, though, I love the way it is today because if we continued on that route that we were going back then, we would never have gotten to the mainstream area that we are today because the sport was more of a spectacle, right? So now, with the refinement, with the great warriors that we have, not that they weren't great back then, it's just a whole new evolutionary process for the UFC. And I love the current state that the UFC is in. But I do think back to those days at UFC 10, UFC 8, UFC 13. Um, it was like a different world. It's almost surreal to think about it right now, but the world was different back then too. We're talking 24 plus years ago.
That's
So,
crazy.
yeah.
Isn't it interesting that mixed martial arts became such a global phenomenon in a relatively short period of time? And you were in the beginning of it,
Yeah.
one of the people.
Well, I always know that it would be. I got into this and sacrificed what I had to sacrifice in my own little niche area of working for the UFC. I mean, I was working for, peanuts and traveling, and I had companies making money doing what I was doing. And I would lose money, going away. It wasn't about making money. I'm not about the paycheck, but I'll be the first one at the bank on a Monday to cash it. But I'm not the guy. I'm not there for the paycheck. I'm there for the experience and for all the amazing things. I know the paycheck's going to come. I have a simple theory in life that if everybody around me is happy, prosperous, and healthy, then it'll all come back to me. And that's the way I work with my partners, and the way I work with everybody I work with. Very unselfish attitude. But everything's cool. It's it's amazing.
Were you always like that? Was it always your philosophy of life, or
Yeah,
it's
yeah, it
afterwards
has
enough?
been. I had my first corporation when I was 19. Had first man I ever fired when I was 19 was over 40. Had a hole in his shoe. One of my salesmen. I remember when I'd fire him, I cried afterwards. It really just affected me that at 19-year-old I'm firing a man 40 who probably can't even pay his rent because he couldn't do his job. And you know, young and inexperienced back then, I went through a lot, and I always had the attitude. I always wanted to help people win. I always wanted to help people be the best they can be. I always wanted to motivate people. I'm a natural born leader, and that was instilled in me by my father from a very young age. So I've always had this attitude, and it's an attitude that I attack and positively attack in everything I do, because everything I do in my life I try to do with passion. And I always tell people out there, if you can think about what are you most passionate about in life, if you can monetize that passion, then you're truly doing what you truly love to do in life. And then you're not necessarily going to work, you're living a lifestyle. So I've always been on the search and the want to develop my own lifestyle, which I have. My life is by design. Everything I do is with passion, and I do it honestly, and I do it with integrity. And if I work with people that are not honest or don't have integrity or arrogant and think they're better than others, then I really have no time for them. You know, that's not who I want to be, not who I want to work with.
You've been with UFC for so long, so that you actually saw all the management teams that been in charge of the company.
Yeah.
How would you compare UFC pre Dana White and Fertitta to Dana White and Fertittas and what UFC today? Can you kind of give us some background on
Sure.
how
Well,
different they are?
sure. Well, when Robert Meyerowitz and Semaphore Entertainment owned the UFC in the beginning with Jorge and Gracie and all the people involved back then, you know, they put on a show that I don't think in their own minds they thought was going to go past 3 or 4 shows. You know, in the original aspect of it, my friend, the director, John Milius, who did Dirty Harry, wrote Dirty Harry and directed the Conan Barbarian movies, Red Dawn and stuff. He originally designed the octagon with Horian to be a moat with deadly fish around the octagon, and people would have to walk over a a bridge to get into the octagon. That was the original theory of thought. And they didn't know if it was going to go 3 or 4 shows. It became the fastest growing pay-per-view. Suddenly you had a spectacle in our hand, and then suddenly here there was a witch hunt led by Senator McCain, who I have tremendous respect for. But at the time, who is passed now, but at the time we were, human cockfighting, they used the term for, and we were dropped by everybody. And Semaphore Entertainment was raking in the cash, but then they all of a sudden the employees were not 50 in the offices. When I went to New York, it was like 5. It was becoming a ghost town. But Robert did everything he could to keep this alive, to the point we were in Louisiana in front of maybe 1,500 people, and I'm announcing, and we're at the lowest crowd, the lowest level we were at. And I think the Fertittas were actually in the audience at that time. I met them for the first time. I was there in Atlantic City because they were considering buying it. So what happened is I got a call that the main event with Kevin Randleman is not going to happen because he slipped in the back on a pole and knocked himself out on the way out. And I've got to tell this semi-angry crowd that what's happening. And then it's cans and bottle time, right? Let's get the hell out of here. Let's get back to the hotel. Then I get a call from Robert Meyerowitz telling me I have good news and bad news. The bad news is I sold the UFC. The good news is I sold it to Dana White and the Fertitta brothers, and they want to keep you and John McCarthy. And then I go to a boxing event in Vegas, and I meet the Fertitta brothers, Lorenzo and Frank, and Dana White, who I already knew. And they take us out to dinner, and it's free pour Opus One, some of the finest red wine you can have. And we're talking. I realized their passion for what they're undertaking. And I thought to myself, wow, this couldn't come at a better time. We're about to practically disappear, and now we're going to be reborn like a phoenix. And they took it, and they had the money and the marketing power and the business minds to take this to the next level. And we were on our way. We all know we went through, had that great 2-year period with the It Factor fighters of Ronda Rousey and great Conor McGregor coming in on the scene and everything else. And suddenly now we're just seen by everybody, and boom, they sell it at the right time, and they get a nice big chunk of change for it, right? Now we're backed by one of the biggest media companies in the world. And we don't, as employees or as independent contractors like I am, notice that much of a difference, except for the fact that we have a powerhouse even more so behind us, with the great Dana White being the maverick businessman that he's become. And without his passion and without his toughness and everything else he's brought into it, like him, love him or not, the bottom line is that's what it takes to get to where we're at. So we're stronger than ever now. And now we're stronger than ever that we're showing the world that we can have sporting events, and safety factors, and tremendous amounts of money being spent to put the safety and protocol in place so that me individually, can feel safe out there in an area where I'm not even feeling safe going into the store down the street right now. Okay. Yeah. It's an amazing accomplishment, and we're doing it. And I'm happy to be on this team. For 24 plus years, I'm on a rocket ship, and I have a first class seat that just keeps going like this. So I'm enjoying the view, man.
So you mentioned Dana White. We know him as the face of UFC. We know him as a business person, but we don't know him as an actual person. Like, how would you describe him on a personal level? Like, when you communicate with him?
Listen, I use the term maverick, right? Mm-hmm. You can look it up in the dictionary, folks, if you don't know what it means, but he's a tough man. He's a sensitive man in the respect of the fact that he feels for other people. You've seen what he does if somebody needs an operation or things he's gone to help people with. And if you get on the wrong side of Dana, you don't want to be on the wrong side of Dana, right? You get on the right side of Dana, show your loyalty and everything. And he's one of the coolest guys in the world. You know, he's a very tough, very intelligent, self-made man, and to be respected for what he's done. And he does have the hearts and minds of the fighters in hand, but he has to run a business. And in business, decisions get made. And some people think those decisions are insensitive or those decisions are incredible. Well, that's what you're going to be judged for when you're the leader of the pack. And you've got to make the decisions. You can't please all the people all the time, but obviously the decisions he's making are correct, or we would not be where we are. So I have nothing but good things to say about Dana White, and also the fact that he's a friend, and at the same time, he's been very loyal to me, right? And I've been very loyal to him, and that's the way our relationship works.
So UFC has changed dramatically over the period of time since you originally got involved. What about the fighters? How do you think fighters changed from a style perspective, from fighting style perspective, from personality perspective, from what they show outside of octagon? What do you think?
Well, personalities are an individual situation, you know, an individual character, and everybody has their individual personalities. And we have the great it factor fighters, like I mentioned, you know, Ronda and Connor and John Jones and George St. Pierre, and I can go on and on and on. We have a big change in the fact that back when I started, we had the Barstool fighters, the Tank Abbotts, you know, the fighter I managed, Scott the Pitbull Ferrazzo, 6'1", you know, arms down to his ankles, you know, just the kind of fighter they wanted back then, who did wind up fighting Tank. And then you realize that the skill factor, you had the jiu-jitsu artists, you had the kickboxers, you had the martial artists of different various types. And then it became mixed martial arts, where everybody realized that you got to know the full circle, you know, like what Bruce Lee talked about, you know, back in his early Jeet Kune Do days, you know, being one of the originators of mixed martial arts. And now the fighters have evolved into the supreme, most talented fighting people in the world, right? These are the most supreme supermen and superwomen in the world. And if anything, everything has gotten better. Again, it's gone from a spectacle to a supreme sport with the finest conditioned athletes in the world. It's been nothing but a tremendous evolutionary process that is more powerful again than ever. But yes, there is a difference. Definitely a difference.
Bruce, you're not from Las Vegas, are you?
No. I'm known for Las Vegas for my poker and blackjack play and my announcing UFCs.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Philadelphia, Dallas, Texas. Philadelphia is my hometown. I was born in Oklahoma, very short, less than a year I lived there. And I moved to Malibu, California when I was 15, which was like culture shock. You know, I started surfing every day and got training into martial arts. I was training with Chuck Norris's fighting partners back then in the art of Tang Soo Do. And all I did was surf, spar, fight, surf, spar, fight, surf, spar, fight.
And let's go back to your childhood. I want to know a little bit more about you, how you were growing up. What was the place like when you were a kid? What's your best memories of that time?
You know, I have and had absolutely wonderful, amazing parents. You know, it all starts at home. My dad, who's passed away in 2008, my mother, God bless her, still with us, 92, rocking and rolling, working out every week. You know, my biggest motivator. She's awesome. My biggest fan. I call her before and after every show. I mean, she'll say, why did Herb Dean let that go so long? You know, and Herb Dean's her friend. You know, he shows up for her birthday party. She loves Herb. But I mean, this is a 92-year-old woman analyzing the fight. You know, I had with my parents and everything they did for me, I had the ability, they took me to Europe at age 11. We traveled Germany. We traveled France, the south of France. I was taught culture. I was taught, we weren't in the days where we're looking at our phones and texting. You know, my dad would read Rudyard Kipling to me, poems at the dinner table. We watched movies. We analyzed things. We communicated. And my dad taught me how to observe people. I learned so much from my parents and what life was all about, my parents being from the World War II generation. And it taught me how to communicate, how to do what I do today, how to have the tenacity and the drive and the motivation I have when it comes to the business I've been involved in, when it comes to how I tackle things. So my dad taught me fighting techniques at 5 and 6 years old before I went to school in Philadelphia. He was very much exposing my brother Brian and I to the ill side of life, the dark side of life that we will come up against. And we did many times. And I remember my dad taught me if somebody got grabbed behind, he would say, pick up your foot and stomp their foot as hard as you can. Somebody grabs you behind, right? Well, I got braced up in school, like the first week I was in school, and I got attacked by 3 guys, and the guy grabbed me from behind. I remember I picked my foot up. I'm 7 years old, 6 years old, and I stomped his foot as hard as I could, and he started to cry. And I thought to myself, I'm going to listen to everything my father tells me from now on, no matter what, right? And I did, whether it was fighting, whether it was handling myself, whether it was how to properly treat people, how to be respectful to women, how to run things. You know, I had a great teacher, and a great teacher in my mother. And I owe a lot to that. And also, too, life back then was a little different than it is today. People were more respectful back then. People appreciated your possessions, who you are. You know, it's just we live in a bit of a decaying society of morality today. It's a lot different than it was growing up, but I still hold on to those old time, or what I call principles of life, that are very important to hold on to today, to be the best I can be for the people around me, and to be, as I say on my podcast, the end of my podcast, to be a role model to my sphere of influence, to lead by example. So I like everybody around me to be healthy, prosperous, and happy, and I know it'll all come back to me.
That's
But
a great,
don't screw
great
with me.
motto.
Don't lie to me, and don't be mean, and don't treat anybody I love wrong. You know, I stand up for what I believe.
I'll try to. And who did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, I got to say again, my father was a big role model, but I wanted to be Bruce Buffer. I wanted to make my own mark. I admire and I learn from other people, and you know, I had actors that I was enamored of, like the great Errol Flynn. You know, I thought he was just, I don't know if you're familiar with who he is, but he was an adventurer, you know, and women loved him, and you know, he just it's like, you know, it was just like an amazing thinking to travel the world and, you know, fight your way out of things and get the pretty girl and be successful in business, you know, and all that kind of fantasy stuff we all think about. But honestly, I just look at the benefits and the aspects of people, and there are many people, and I say, I would love to be like that. I would love to achieve that. I would love to do this. And then I just go for it. You know, I go for it as Bruce Buffer, not as anybody else.
Mhm.
So it's like when I got an announcing, my brother is the great, legendary, greatest announcer of all time, named Michael Buffer, right? Let's get ready to rumble. I'm his manager for 30 years. If I could have copied anybody, it would have been him. But I wasn't interested in being, with all respect, Frank Sinatra Jr. I wanted to be Bruce Buffer. And I told myself I will create my own style. Like Michael changed announcing style. Everybody wanted to be Michael. And I thought, I'm not going to go in this and just be like Michael. I want to do and answer that fire within me, and I need to move, and I need to do this and do that. And my style developed over years. But I told myself, if within the first 3 years I didn't develop my own style that I could continue to refine, that I would quit, because I didn't want to be the guy riding the coattails of the great
Mhm.
Michael Buffer. I don't ride his coattails. I've been sewing him on for 30 years. I don't ride him. Okay. He's my partner and we work together. But out of respect to the great Michael Buffer, I would never copy him where everybody else did. Not me. You know,
I'll get
do
back
my
to
thing.
Michael Buffer. I had a few questions on that. Now, you went to school to Santa Monica College, right?
Yeah, no,
What
I did. Yeah, Santa Monica College. I graduated Santa Monica High School.
what was your major?
My major was business
Mm-hmm.
and marketing, and I also did some psychology, because I always loved psychology and understanding how people tick. But it was mostly business. But then I started my first corporation when I was 19, and I stopped going
Mm-hmm.
to college. And I said that I will dedicate the next year or two to learning business in the streets, make my mark. And if I don't, and I have to, I'll go back to college. But I never went back to college. And I'm not saying that's what people should do, but you can be very successful. You know, you have to go to college. You want to be an accountant, you want to be an attorney, a doc, you have to go to college, right? But salesmen, entrepreneurs, following your passion, following your dreams, um, you don't necessarily need college. College teaches you knowledge. It doesn't teach you application. You learn
Mm-hmm.
application not just in labs and in college. You got to learn it in real life. You know, where somebody's trying to be better than you, somebody's trying to steal from you, somebody's trying to beat you. I mean, these are the things you come up against in life. You got to be like Rocky. You get knocked down, you want to get up and move forward, punching harder than ever. And that's what it takes to survive.
And the company you started was telemarketing company, right? Is it the one you're referring to?
Yes.
Can you tell me how you started it and how did you run it and who were like around you? How many people you had? What you guys were doing?
If you ever saw a movie called The Wolf of Wall Street with
Yes.
Leonardo DiCaprio, I was like the Wolf of LA. You know, but I wasn't doing I wasn't doing the telemarketing he was doing, where they were, you know, ripping people off.
Yeah.
stealing, basically it was a bad business. And obviously he paid the price for it. I was in the business selling office supplies, paper and toner for copiers and stuff.
Hmm.
I started in a company where I walked in, there was like 25 salesmen on the phone. I saw the best salesperson. I looked at what he was doing, like I was telling you earlier. I became the number one salesperson within 2 weeks. I looked at the sales manager sitting there making in 1976, 1,000, 1,500 a week, which is like 5,000 a week now, give or take.
Oh
And I said,
gosh.
how can I get his job? And I had his job within 3 months. Then I thought, okay, I can start my own corporation, and I left and started my own corporation. And 70% of the sales force went with me to my offices 3 miles away, and I wound up getting sued by the company, doing everything correctly, but I wound up getting sued for $1 million at 19 years old in 1976, which I did not have because all these people came to work for me. Long story cut short, I got them to drop the suit, pay for everything, became part of their company, went back to work for them, brought all the salespeople back, and made more money with them. There's always a positive you create out of a negative. Now I'm running companies. I had as many as 100 plus people, telemarketing on the phones, 3 shifts a day. I trained thousands. When I say I probably did train 3,000 or more salespeople how to sell, motivating them, getting them going, closing their sales, making more money they ever dreamed of. And I loved it. I love seeing people make money. I know if you make money, you work for me, then I'm going to make money, right? That went on, but I also had other companies, a water company, import export business, security company. I put alarm systems, camera systems. I didn't. I paid, I had employees that did, but I
Hmm.
ran the company. I've owned a number of different things, but I never found my passion until I was in my late 30s. And that was after I met my half brother, Michael Buffer, at age like 30. And 4 years later, I became his manager. And then shortly after that, started announcing UFCs in 1996. That's when I found my true passion. My true passion is managing my brother in the area of sports and entertainment, which I'm very familiar with, and making movies, making TV shows, video games, toys, you name it. I've had the pleasure of doing everything that was on my bucket list, and I have more to achieve. And that's 63 years old. I'm the same as I was 25 years ago, if not 50 years ago or 40 years ago. I still have that passion and that drive, which moves me because you want to monetize your passion. You're not going to work every day, then you're living a lifestyle. Whether you work for somebody or not, if you're doing what you're passionate about, then you're living a lifestyle. I like to live life by design.
There is a fascinating story of you and Michael, how you guys didn't know of each other for a very long time. I know you've been asked this story for many, many times, and you told us many, many times, but maybe you could spend a minute to remind uh, those two listeners who don't know the story.
Well, it was in late 80s um, that a man came out looking very debonair, very handsome, James Bond appeal in the world of boxing, my favorite sport aside from surfing, which is my favorite sport still today overall. Um, my dad and I, and my brother Brian, we were just incensed watching boxing 3 times, Tuesday night boxing, Saturday fights, wide world of sports on Sunday. And boxing was the water cooler conversation on a Monday because the great fighters in the late 80s and early 90s, Tyson, Hagler, Hearns, De La Hoya, on and every week. It was amazing. It's like having a John Jones, or a Conor McGregor fight every week. There was somebody you wanted to see, right? Now comes this man doing his Let's Get Ready to Rumble, and we all became fans. But when they put his name on the screen, it said Michael Buffer. And in my telemarketing companies, I had every phone book in the United States. I had never seen my last name in any phone book. And I'm like, who's this guy? Right? We kind of look alike, but he's pretty. I'm not pretty. I got scars. It's like, what's going on here? So then people used to stop me on the street. Is that your brother? It says, let's get ready to rumble. I go, no, my brother's Brian. Right? I'm not sure, but I got this weird feeling in my stomach, and I started calling Don King's offices and Bob Arum's office, and I found out that this man uh, grew up near me in Philadelphia and all these similarities. And then he did a fight in California, in LA, where we were living. And we had my dad call the arena and leave a message, and Michael called him back, and they went out to lunch. It turned out to be his son. My dad never told me, which he did, before that. He thought that it could be his son because in World War II, he was married briefly for 9 months. He never told me. He'd been married to my mom forever, 37, 40 years at that time, 56 total before he passed. And said, son, it was one of those things. I was married. I went overseas in the Pacific. I came back. A son had been born. We got divorced. And the last time I saw him was when he was 2.5. And Michael was raised by foster parents under the name of Huber, but he was never formally adopted. And when he went in the Army at 20 during the Vietnam War, they saw his birth certificate and said, you're not Michael Huber. You're Michael Buffer. Had that not happened, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now, right? It's one of those weird things in life that just,
It's
that fork in the
fascinating.
road, and you
Yeah.
went this way instead of this way, right? It still blows me away. And in my book, It's Time, I go into very big detail about it.
I'll leave the link to the book because it's fascinating. So, and how well do you remember that very first meeting with Michael?
Like it was yesterday. Okay, we're at a restaurant. We're sitting there anticipating this man walking in. I'm a huge fan of boxing, a huge fan of him. And this is my blood walking in. It was a very interesting feeling. But we all got along great. We had a great dinner. It was wonderful for all of us. And it was great how it all came together.
How did you decide to go in business with him? And how did he receive the proposal from you?
Very simple. I was basically at a fight, 1992, November 16th or 17th, at the Thomas Mack Center in Vegas. Riddick Bowe, Vander Holyfield won. Amazing fight. And I was with my parents, and we all went to Vegas together. And when I saw the way people reacted to Michael, it's like I had an epiphany go off in my head. And instead of going out and partying and blackjack and, hi girls, what's going on, all the stuff you do in Vegas, I went back to my room. And I sat down and I could not control myself. I started writing like 3 pages of notes. What put Michael in the basketball courts, football fields, businesses, movies, TV, make video games, toys, this, that, the other. I'm like going, whoa, 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 whoa. And I met Michael and I told him my ideas. And I said, listen, I'm burned out on my businesses. I'm making great money. I'm living an amazing lifestyle, but I'm not passionate about what I'm doing. It's time. I would even say it back then. It's time for a change. So I said, I want to sell off my companies, quit with the money I have in the bank, make you richer and more famous than you ever dreamed, aside from where you're at now, by being your partner and your business manager. And we'll do this and this. And he's like, how are you going to do all that in so many words? And like, in so many words, I said, well, if I'm going to give all this up, you better believe I'll make this happen. But I don't know how I'm going to do it yet, but I'll figure it out. Well, that was, 26, 27 years ago, and I think it's working.
What did you do differently from his prior manager, if you had any?
Say again?
What did you do differently from probably he
never had management.
Got it.
He never had a manager. He never, he knew he needed it in some way, but Michael, and understandably so, very untrusting, not going to hand over his career to anybody. And we just started from scratch. And I had a video game made. I had a first toy made within a year, 2 toys. The video game in '99, which was one of the biggest selling video games at the time, with the Dreamcast that came out, Ready to Rumble Boxing. And it just all took off. Once I would travel the country, go to trade shows, I'd shake hands, take names, always ask for everything, follow up. I know how to do business, and I ask for it. I don't wait for things to happen. I make them happen, right? And that's the attitude you got to have to succeed in business. But if you've got a product that you believe in and you're passionate about it, then you'll come across better to the people you're trying to sell or do business with than anything. And I'm always honest. I don't lie. I'll lie at the poker table because it's legal. I want all your chips. But in life, I will not lie. I tell it like it is. And you lie to me, then we don't do business. We're done. You're my friend. You lie to me. We're not friends. We're done.
That's tough, but fair.
I'm tough and I'm fair.
You've been in this business for quite a long time. What was the best selling merchandise for Michael Buffers?
Definitely the biggest one. Was the video game Ready to Rumble Boxing, of which we made 3 games, 2 with Midway, 1 with Atari. Michael's coming out in the movie Rumble with big animated movie coming out. We had a toy line called WCW Toys when we were at the WCW Wrestling. Big successful venture there. We sold in retail sales in the last 25 years, roughly about almost $500 million in sales.
Okay.
For ventures, toys, this, that. Now, that doesn't mean that's in our pocket. You have to
Yes,
understand that's the
revenue
retail
and
sales. I read these things where they say Michael makes $1 million every time he says, let's get ready to rumble. And then I'll read where it says that he made $400 million and all that. And it's not that Michael hasn't made a lot of money. Don't get me wrong, but it's amazing how people run with these figures.
And what was your path to UFC? I read an interview, and you actually alluded to this a little bit, that you wanted to be an announcer, but you didn't want to be like Michael. You wanted to be your own version.
Yeah. Well, at the time, Michael, being legendary as is, everybody wants to copy him. Many people copy. Let's get this. Let's get ready for this. His intonation. I can name some announcers that just have watched hours of video, hundreds of hours, just be like Michael. And that's great. I understand. Imitation is the height of flattery. I had no interest in that. I had no interest in wanting to be, with all respect, Frank Sinatra Jr. I wanted to be Bruce Buffer. And just like Michael brought his own air to the announcing world, I wanted to bring my own air to the announcing world. And by doing that, I told myself that in the first 2 to 3 years, I don't create my own style of announcing that I can refine and develop over time, I'm going to quit. I didn't want to do it. That didn't happen, right? So I put my energy in there. I'm physical. I announce the way I do. I never rehearse. I go out and feel the energy of the crowd when there's a crowd, and I get my stuff going. Otherwise, I go out and feel the energy of myself and the fighters and get it going, you know? I just wanted to be known and respected for trying to always bringing 150%, and I always give the best job I can, whether you like what I do, you don't, or whatever. All I know is I bring it and I try to be the best I can, and that's all I can promise and all I can do in life. And hopefully you enjoy my announcing.
Everyone does, and so you coined this almost this phrase, and it's time, and it's actually patented by you. And I've read that it's you're very particular about people using this or you're just ready to rumble. So how did you approach your brand differently from Michael's brand when you were looking at yourself as an actual brand name?
Right. I didn't do it differently because to me, all business is the same. It's just the product that's different. And one of the secrets you learn in business, and I teach in my business motivational speeches when I'm teaching branding and marketing to company owners and companies and people that want to be there, is that, again, all business is the same. It's just the product that's different. Now, the principles that I applied to breaking Michael and achieving the success he did and building the brand, I apply the same principles to me, right? And it's different. And you work from a base. In Michael, it was the HBO or the squared circle boxing ring. My base is the octagon. You build everything out of that, right? And that's what I do. I'm a brand builder.
That's
remarkable. I helped build a couple brands. I mean, I helped build the UFC brand in my own way, you know, recognizing how great it was. Let's Get Ready to Rumble brand, the It's Time brand. I've worked in poker on brands, you know, so if I recognize something, I knew UFC was going to be the biggest thing ever. I knew it from day one. I never gave up on that thought. I knew Michael would be the biggest thing ever, and Let's Get Ready to Rumble. I never gave up on the thought. As far as I'm concerned, me and Bruce Buffer, I just get out and do what I do, and so far, so good. Everything's going according to schedule, as I say.
Would you draw parallels between fighting, poker that you like to play, and business? What do you think of?
It's all the same. The mental similarities are the same throughout everyone. In business, in poker, in life, you go in with your chip stack, you play your game, be patient, make the right decisions, and there'll be decisions at times where you got to push all those chips and go all in, and you're either in a fight going to get knocked out or knock the other guy out. In business, you're going to win and succeed or maybe fail, and that's the move you got to make sometimes. But you got to think it out. Make sure you have all the knowledge before you step on that path so you make the right decision, and don't make it emotionally.
So you've been very, very successful inside and outside of Octagon, obviously, and outside even more. So what motivates you now? What keeps you going?
Everything I do is passion. Everything you see me do, I have passion for. I'm coming out with my own bourbon called Puncher's Chance. I'm very passionate about it. It takes work. I'm coming out, that'll be out in September, give or take. I'm coming out, it's incredible too, if you like a good bourbon, top notch. I'm coming out with my own line of toiletries, the It's Time cologne, deodorant, facial care. That's going to be around the beginning of the year. You know, I develop projects, thank God they come along. I've turned down a lot of things too, because I only want to do what I believe is the best for my brand and believe what I think is the best for the people that are going to spend money to buy that bottle or buy that cologne or whatever. I want it to be the best that I can put out. I'm just not looking for, you know, a quick dollar. Again, I'm not about the paycheck, but I am about the paycheck, but I'm not about the paycheck.
That's a great way of putting it. So you in a UFC 3 game, right? Have you played the game yourself?
Oh yeah, I've played as myself too.
So how is the fighting style of Bruce Buffer in the game different from fighting style of Bruce Buffer in real life?
No, that's pretty it. That's the way I like to fight.
Really?
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
That's it. Yeah, we you know, we put the style and the way I like to fight, and you know, I went through a lot of questions and answers, and they developed a character, and I'm very happy the way it came out. And you know, physically, looks exactly. It's pretty much it's pretty there.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like you're a fit guy. You obviously you do some sports stuff. How do you find time for everything you currently do?
Well, I have to work out every day. It's like eating breakfast. It's something I need to help with my tension, help with my stress, and of course, being athletic and taking care of myself. I like to be in shape. And right now, with COVID-19 and the pandemic situation we're in, I've been taking time aside from all the work I've been doing to get in the best physical and mental shape possible. You know, I didn't need to lose weight, but I'm actually 15 pounds lighter now after 2 months because the way I'm training and the way I'm eating, it's like I'm preparing for a fight
Hmm.
because when everything opens up, I want to be in the best physical and mental shape that I've been in years to go out and tackle it again. I was fine before. I'm just better now.
Humble guy here.
Well, yeah, I'm playing with you a little bit, but I mean, listen, you need to motivate yourself in life. You need to be happy within yourself. If you're not completely happy with yourself and achieving what you want to achieve, then you can't, it's going to be hard to make people happy around you, right? It all starts with your base and then you give out. And like I said, no matter how kiddingly I was referring to myself just then, my attitude is very unselfish. When I work with you, when I'm with you, I love to see happiness, prosperity. If I can help you to be the best you can be, because then it'll all come back to me, right? It's like a pay it forward, non-selfish attitude. And I'm all about everybody and helping people to be the best they can be. I love to see people win. Whatever that level of winning is, I love it. I would watch them spin the lottery wheel on TV and see a family suddenly win $50, $100,000, which is life change for them. And I get tears in my eyes because I'm so happy for them. I didn't get one of those dollars, but they did. And I'm happy for them. I'll go out and make my own dollars.
You're a fantastic man. Here you go.
Oh, thank you. My mom thinks so, and you think so. So
I know, right? My mom thinks great things about me too. So I have a quick blitz for you, Bruce. I'm gonna ask you a quick question, and you give me a quick answer. Okay. What's your favorite movie?
The Wild Bunch by Sam Peckinpah. I have many, but that just came to mind. The Wild Bunch, 1968, I think it is, an amazing movie, a western uh, about a dying breed of man. It's about loyalty and honesty amongst even thieves, and it's a pretty wild picture. Very violent, but it has messages in it that I live by.
I don't think you're shy of violence. I'm pretty sure you're fine with that.
I work in the world of violence, my
I know.
friend.
What's your favorite song?
To get me motivated, Thunderstruck by AC/DC.
Hmm. What's your favorite country to visit?
There's a number of them. Anywhere in Europe. I love Europe. I love the UK too. I have a great time in the UK.
What's the first item on your bucket list?
Uh, I'd like to go great white shark diving, in a cage with great white sharks. Like to jump out of an airplane with somebody on my back first. And, things like that.
And I have a final question for you. What would be your life advice for young people who are watching this interview?
Be honest, stay strong, be respectful, teach by example, and be the best you can be as a person. We live in a decaying society of morality. It's changing people's attitudes towards each other. We need to keep that strong so that we have a future ahead of us where people respect each other, support each other, and are kind to each other. And the only way that's going to happen is if we exercise those principles ourselves and to follow your passion, whether it's a hobby, whether it's business, whether it's a girlfriend that you're in love with, family that you love. Take care of the people around you. Follow your passion and create a good, solid base to live your life from. And that can come in many different ways.
That's fantastic advice, Bruce. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. And best of luck to you. Looking forward to the bourbon.
Yeah, me too.
So best of luck with that as well.
I appreciate that too. And for your fans, or your listeners that are fans of the UFC, one thing my partner and I do here at Buffer Enterprise, if you go to brucebuffer.com, as you've done, and I do the championship audios and video introductions, which are like a keepsake for life for fans, like you're a champion in the cage. I do weddings and birth of babies and business videos and all, but go there. We make them very inexpensive, and partial proceeds go to COVID-19 animal, military, and children charities. But we love it because when we do these things for people, the thank you letters we get actually bring tears to our eyes because we're making people so happy. So if you want a good pump, you want to feel like you're the king of the world, then let me help you make you feel that way. Just check out brucebuffer.com and I'll be happy to give you something that you will love. And if you don't love it, don't pay for it.
I actually saw it and it's fantastic. I definitely want to echo that.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much. It's very kind of you to have me on your show. I wish you all the best. Love the logo. Very cool. And you take care of yourself, my friend. Thank you so much. Big cheers and no fears forever.
Thank you, Bruce.